everybody. Buck Bellew here. It's Buck's Beat, episode 103. This will be an NFL draft preview as we have the first round of the NFL draft coming up in 2 weeks from today. And the Falcons with the 15th pick in the first round. Be joined by NFL draft analyst Mike Detillier. Will be joining me in a few moments as we take a look at what's going on with the Falcons and the other teams in the NFC South. Right now, though, wanted to get started by talking about the Falcons. This will be a draft collaboration. You may have heard that term with Terry Fontenot and the guys up at Flowery Branch, a collaboration. Now, does that mean nobody is going to take the blame for getting it wrong? It's going to be a group effort. We've heard a lot about the collaboration. And who does that involve? Well, obviously, Terry Fontenot, the general manager, Ryan Pace, the vice president of football operations and head of player personnel, Kyle Smith, the assistant general manager, and we've got Tumbo, the college head of college scouting, and head coach Raheem Morris. I would imagine that would be the collaboration people right there that will determine what the Falcons are going to do. Biggest thing going into the draft is the Falcons can't afford to get these picks wrong. Got a lot of needs and not very many quality picks. In fact, you're probably hearing how the Falcons have 5 draft picks in this 2025 draft. I really count it as 3 quality picks is what I'm looking at. Falcons with the 15th pick in the first round, also with a second-round pick. That will be pick number 46. And then a pick in the 4th round. That would be pick number 118. The other 2 picks are 7th-round picks. And typically, you're just not going to find many players in the 7th round. So 3 quality picks for our Atlanta Falcons. A first-rounder, a second-rounder, and a 4th-rounder. Let's take a quick look at what Terry Fontenot has done as a general manager with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I've got Fontenot 4 for 4 on first-round picks, and all 4 of those first-round picks have been in the top 10. Little hard to miss in the first round when you're picking in the top 10. Now, you probably don't count Kyle Pitts. I do. Pro Bowl player the first year out of college, and certainly has been under a lot of criticism since. But with the 4 first-round picks, Fontenot has done a good job of finding impact players with a top 10 pick in the first round. So I'll give him credit for that. Now, here's the problem. Typically, these NFL teams are going to build their team in rounds 2 through 5. And that's where these general managers will build their reputation. And as I look at the 19 picks that Fontenot has made in rounds 2 through 5, I'm not going to count one of them in Braylon Trice, who was injured in training camp a year ago. We don't know what he's going to bring to the table. So I'll total it out at 18 picks for Fontenot in rounds 2 through 5. He's hit on 5 players out of those 18 picks. So a 28% hit rate for Fontenot in rounds 2 through 5. That's a failure is what that is. Round 6 and 7, as I mentioned, you're probably not going to find a lot of players at the end of the draft that will make the football team. He's had 8 picks in the 6th and 7th round. Fontenot 1 for 8 with those picks. So you add it all up, the entire 4 drafts that Fontenot's been in charge of. He's made 30 selections. He is 10 for 30, 30% hit rate. Rounds 1 through 5, he's 9 for 18, counting those first-round picks, put him at 50%. And then rounds 2 through 5, 5 of 18, 28% hit rate. That is not going to keep you in that position very long. In fact, many people believe if Fontenot does not hit on these picks in this year's draft, these 3 quality picks, that he'll be cleaning out that office very soon. Now, what are the Falcons' biggest needs coming into the draft? They went big on the defensive line a year ago, and we don't know anything about those defensive linemen they took in last year's draft. They need size at the defensive tackle position. You got to find a way to replace Grady Jarrett. I would imagine they're looking long and hard at the defensive tackles in this draft. Also, edge rusher is talked about so much here in Atlanta that there's a great focus on finding an edge rusher in this year's draft. In fact, that's all the boys at the coffee shop will talk about is what edge rusher they're going to take in the draft. So let's take a look at that position group. Defensive line, you got Kenneth Grant, Shamar Stewart, Mike Green, James Pierce would be defensive linemen, tackles, and edge rushers that they're going to be taking a long look at with that pick number 15 in the first round. They need to find a cornerback opposite of A.J. Terrell. And they would be able to look in the first round. You got Barron out of Texas, Will Johnson, really good all-around player out of Michigan, and Benjamin Morrison might be a guy they could find in that second round to play cornerback for him moving forward. Center is a big need right now. Really, that is a big hole for this Falcons team. Not a great year to be looking for a center in the NFL draft. Gray Zabel is a offensive tackle in the draft that some of these personnel guys have talked about moving him inside to the center position. Keep an eye on that. Seth McLaughlin is another center out of Ohio State that the Falcons are certainly taking a look at, too. Offensive tackle, see where D. Orlando Ledbetter with the Atlanta Journal, the beat writer covering the Atlanta Falcons, believes that Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle out of Texas, will be the Falcons' first-round pick. Also, Josh Simmons out of Ohio State, another highly rated offensive tackle, could be an option there, too. I do believe, even though Mr. Blank has put it out there that Falcons are going to be focused on the defensive side of the ball in this year's draft, but when you look at the needs, and with the way they play that 11 personnel grouping, 3 wide receiver set as their base set, Luther Burden would be a player there around the middle of the first round that could be an impact player. Falcons fans probably go crazy if they took a wide receiver with that first-round pick. But that's some of the grouping position groups and players that the Falcons have been doing a lot of research on coming into the draft in 2 weeks. So keep an eye on what's going on there. A lot of smoke screens going around. There's a chance the Falcons could move back in the first round, move out of the 15th spot, pick up an additional quality pick by doing so, and still be able to perhaps get the player that they're focused on getting in the first round. That, to me, would be the best-case scenario for Terry Fontenot. Mike Green comes to mind, the pass rusher out of Marshall. Falcons could trade back out of 15 to, say, trade back 4 or 5 spots and still be able to get Green and pick up an additional quality pick. So I think that would be the best thing that they could do with that first-round pick was to do that. The edge rusher situation, hey, the Falcons next to last in sacks last year with 31 sacks. That is horrendous. It has been since 2004 since the Falcons have ended up in top 10 in sacks in the National Football League. So it's been a long time since the Falcons have been able to get after the quarterback. They did sign Leonard Floyd with a free agent contract of 1 year and $10 million. That will certainly help. But you got to figure they're totally focused on finding a way to get one of these pass rushers in the first round. James Pierce, Mike Green, 2 of the guys that they're in position perhaps to be able to get. Look at the previous drafts and the failures that have come with the people they have selected. I mentioned Braylon Trice. Hopefully we'll see something out of him this year. Ebu Katie led the team in sacks with 6.5 a year ago. D'Angelo Malone's been a failure. Marlon Davidson was a failure. Tack McKinley was a tremendous failure. These are some of the guys the Falcons have gone after, and it has not worked out for them at that edge rusher position. So hoping for the best. Only 3 quality picks for the Falcons. Can't afford to get any of those wrong. And so keep those fingers crossed. Maybe the Falcons can, for once, hit on some players that can come in and make an impact. So what are the competitors doing in the NFC South? We're talking about the Tampa Bay Bucks, the New Orleans Saints, the Carolina Panthers. We're going to dive into that with our NFL draft analyst, Mike Detillier, will join us right now to help us break down the NFC South. All right, joining us now, Mike Detillier from WWL in New Orleans, a Saints insider, NFL draft analyst. Mike, let's break it down in the NFC South here. I just got through talking about the Atlanta Falcons and their obsession to hit on an edge rusher. They've got that 15th pick in the first round. Of course, Abdul Carter is going to be off the board. I'm guessing Jalen Walker will be off the board by 15 too. So looks like the Falcons could be looking at Mike Green out of Marshall, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M. 3 of the guys that could be on the board. What are you thinking about these edge rushers as far as the first round goes in this year's NFL draft?
Buck, I've done this. This is year 40 for me. I've never had a group of defensive linemen with 24 of my top 75 players being defensive linemen. It's never happened. So it's a really thick group of defensive linemen. If you want to get better up front, this is the draft class to do it. The one thing, I guess maybe the second thing I could say about this group is where there's a lot of really good athletes. You can tell when you break down tape, there's not a lot of them that, from a technical standpoint, know what the hell they're doing. they still neophytes as far as technicians are concerned. The best technique guy, and I saw, and I've watched every one of them, is Mike Green from Marshall. Again, Mike's got some off-the-field issues that you're going to have to deal with. That is concerning. But from a technician standpoint, he's the very best in his ability to use his arms and hands to get off a blocker. He's got a real sharp spin move and what I call a spin and tangle. And he spins around an offensive lineman. He tangles up their feet. He's right past them. And he's got a good power move, too. You just can't win all the time with speed. And he's got a nice power move that he can use on there. I think Mike Green would be a great pickup for them. The other guy I really like, too, and I think he's got talent and he's got some pass rush potential with a little bit of work, and that's Mikael Williams from Georgia. Shamar Stewart, let somebody else be the project team with him. I've watched him since high school all the way up into A&M. He looks the part like he's chiseled out of stone, and he makes no plays. Zero. At times, he's a half tick or 2 ticks off from being where the ball carrier is or getting to the quarterback. So I'm going to let somebody else deal with him, though I do think he'll be a first-round pick type player. I'm a big fan of Jalen Walker. I think that Jalen will go in the top 10. I hope he lasts to 9 because I don't think he would get to 10. If that's the case, then, he's unique because he's a off linebacker on first, second down. And then on third down, I can say, okay, Jalen, sick him, go after the quarterback. Really talented young man. So that's what you're looking at early in this draft class, a lot of really good, talented defensive linemen at both end and tackle. But the technical part of the game, there's only a couple of them that are really good at it. I think Carter's gotten much better at it. Jalen Walker's gotten much better. But if you're just looking at the technician, it's Mike Green.
Is he a guy you could trade back a little bit, pick up an additional quality pick, and still be able to get him somewhere around 20? Falcons only have 3 quality picks in the draft, Mike.
Better not trade too far, And I think just like last year when they sort of pegged Michael Penix Jr., I think they've got somebody in mind that they want. And so if you were looking to trade back, you couldn't trade back very far if your guy was Mike Green.
Now, I've done my research on the Falcons not taking Georgia players in 59 NFL drafts. Falcons have never selected a Georgia player in the first or the second round. And I'm guessing Jalen Walker's going to be off the board. Looks like there might be a chance Mykel Williams is there. But I've got no confidence the Falcons are going to take a Georgia player with that first round based on those 59 previous drafts.
Man, you sound like a talk show host in Louisiana talking about why they don't pick LSU players.
Yeah, sort of the same, isn't it? Why is this, do you believe?
I know the former coach, they brought in a receiver that was a late-round pick, and they picked him off of waivers, and every practice that comment was, well, what do you think about so-and-so from LSU? And he answered it every question, every practice. It got under his skin where I think he's like, okay, I got enough of this. I don't want to answer no more questions about LSU players. Now, it's sort of silly because you think about the number of players LSU and Georgia has had throughout the years that it wouldn't have a connection there. But we go through the same thing here, and so many people bringing up about what if Will Campbell's on the board at 9? Do the Saints pick him? I say, one, it's hard for me to believe Will still be there at 9. But if he is, I don't care if he played at Ole Miss, if he played at Montana or Cal, he'd be on my team. But both teams have sort of stayed away from that hometown guy. It's amazing, isn't it? But I hear the exact same thing about LSU players not going to the Saints. The exact same comments.
All right, the Saints with that 9th pick in the first round, a new head coach. What do you think they're looking at? Who are they targeting? Could be a cornerback I'm reading, Barron or Will Johnson. You got the offensive tackles, Mimbo and Will Campbell. Jalen Walker looks like he might be a good fit. Any chance they take Shedeur Sanders at 9 if he's there?
No, I really don't. I'm not buying that. It's a little bit too vocal for me. This football team's never tipped anybody off of where they're going to go in the draft. Now they're going to start today. It doesn't connect the dots. To be honest with you, I think the guy they really like is Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. He would fill a lot of needs on this team, and he's played a ton of positions. And that not only has he played tight end, he's played the X and Y receiver at receiving core. He's played some fullback. He's played kind of the gadget quarterback since he was a high school quarterback. And they know that at least for 2025, Derek Carr will be on the team, and he likes to throw the football to the tight end. So I think if they had their druthers, it would be Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. The guys you named off here for Jalen Walker or Will Campbell or Mimble would be there. It'd certainly give them a lot of consideration. But I think Tyler Warren's a guy that I know people in this organization like quite a bit. And he fills some needs for you, and he gives you a big man receiver, which they really don't have on this team today.
I've got him as one of my top 5 players in the draft. How about you?
I got him 6th. So we close. But we know a lot of times where you rank them and where they go, there's a little bit of a disparity on it, and teams talk about all that. We picked the best player on the board. No, they picked the best player at the biggest need position. We've been doing this long enough, Buck. That don't ever change. Now, they got people in the media that want to write that the same way they write about next man up, which is the dumbest comment that you hear. But I get why coaches say it, and that's great to say in the locker room. But it really is nonsensical when you think about it. If that next man up was that good, he'd be playing. He wouldn't be watching. So it's going to be the best player at the biggest need position you have on the team. And I think everybody feels that way, that's how they go into the draft. But it's sort of been the synonym for every head coach or GM that comes out to speak about the draft each and every year.
All right, Panthers go at 8, one spot in front of the Saints. What will Charlotte be targeting in that first round?
I'll tell you the story, Buck. When we did our mock first round a little over a month ago, my producer, Charlie Long, he throws me the sheet, and I write in the 9th spot, Jalen Walker, Saints. And he was like, you didn't fill out the other 8 yet? I said, no. I said, but I got it. When I got to the Panthers, I had to erase it. That's where I had Jalen Walker going. And so I think they would look to kind of upgrade things on the defensive side, the football. The general manager, Dan Morgan, as a former linebacker, this team, Brian Burns is not there anymore to give them a guy that can come off the edge. They need to get better in the front seven. You need a leader on the defensive side to feel, and that's what Jalen Walker would do for you. So I have them going for Walker. I've seen other spots with different players, but if Walker's there, he would be very difficult for me to pass on. It feels a huge need spot for them. And they really don't have an alpha dog leader on the defensive side to feel. Walker would do that for them.
No doubt. How about the Bucs at 19? What do you think they're targeting there?
It would either be an edge rusher or another receiver. I think they'd like to get another receiver to help out Baker Mayfield. But this is a team that also has sort of thrived on pressure in matchup alignments. And I think a guy who would be a great fit for them would be Jahad Campbell, the linebacker from Alabama, who highly recruited guy. And talking to Pete Jenkins when he was there working with the linemen, he was like, Mike, they moved him inside because they had Braswell and they have Dallas Turner. He ain't going to play. So they kicked him inside. You watched him last year, really got extensive action. I like what I see of him as an athlete. He moves around real quickly along the field. He still is a bit of a neophyte as far as getting around bigger blockers, and that's something he's got to work on. And then they let him blitz the quarterback a few times, and it was like, watch out, here he comes. He is a really talented player, and I think he'd be a great fit for the Bucs defense. So if I had to pencil it in today, I'd go with Jahad Campbell, who's coming off a labrum surgery, which may drop him a couple spots. But he's young, man. You have surgery when you're a young man, you come back fast from that. So I got Campbell going to the Buccaneers.
Mike wanted to hit you up on the quarterback situation. Cam Ward, obviously the number one quarterback in this year's draft class, a pretty good shot of going number one to Nashville and the Titans there. Is that what you're thinking about, Cam? First pick, Nashville?
Yeah, I think that's where they go. I think they made up their mind. They were going to go that route with him. I got to see him as a freshman at Incarnate Word. They can't play Nicholls State, which is maybe 10 minutes from my home. I'm on the sidelines. I meet him, his dad, the whole family. And, man, he put on a show that day. And we left the field. I told Tim Rebo, the coach at Nicholls, you ain't going to never worry about having to play him again. He was like, why not? I said, man, he's that good. He ain't staying at Incarnate Word. Well, it didn't take that long. He goes to Washington State, and then he goes to Miami of Florida. And he had some choices last year. And he actually seriously thought about coming out early for the draft. he needs a little bit of technique work as a passer. He throws everything arm. I mean, he's an arm passer. He's not a quick setup guy. Man, when he gets that down, he's really special, and he's confident. He wants the ball in critical spots. You look at the Titans, Will Levis, you're not going anywhere with that. And you have a new stadium being built, and you need a star player. And I think that they're going to bank everything on Cam Ward being that star performer for them at the quarterback position.
Where would Cam have gone in last year's draft as far as the quarterbacks go? We had Caleb Williams going 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May 3, Penix at 9. So we had 4 quarterbacks go in the top 10 a year ago. Where would Ward have been in that grouping?
He'd have been 4th. It'd been Caleb, it'd have been Jaden, it'd have been Drake, and then I think it'd have been Cam Ward. I think he'd have been the 4th guy. He'd have got picked before Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. There's a false narrative out there about him that he would not have been he'd have been the last one picked in this group. And the people that's saying that don't know a damn thing about what they're talking about. Nothing, It's the same analytic nerds that want to tell you that Will Campbell's arms are too short to play left tackle.
Yeah.
Okay, man, listen, Buck, we live in that world where somebody who's never played the position before, never done anything of that, but they go off of these numbers and they become the analytic nerds about everything. You got to play. I've scouted for 40 years. I've seen a lot of long-armed offensive linemen that don't know what the hell they're doing with the arms and the hands.
Yeah.
So what good is it to have all that list if you don't know how to play? Will Campbell has been a stellar player in the SEC since he was an 18-year-old guy. What do you not understand about that? And the other guy I'm intrigued with where he goes is Josh Simmons from Ohio State. Because when I watched him, he was a good technician at Ohio State. Then he has the patella injury, and he hasn't really been able to work out. And I think if he was healthy, he'd probably be a top 10 or 11 player in this draft class. And he won't go in that top 11. But where he ends up afterwards is sort of the mystery here. Because I know a lot of offensive line coaches like him. But, coming off the injury, that's always going to drop you a little bit. And it's almost a kind of a flop of what I saw with Walter Nolan. I thought he was an underachieving player at A&M. I think he flashed it, and then he would take a play or two off and then flash it. And you watched him last year, Buck at Ole Miss, and every snap he brought it to you. And watching him go against LSU and some of the other schools he went up against, he was hell on wheels. And yet I see this thing about, he's a lazy player. The thing is, he's a lazy player. Talk to them guys that had to block him a year ago. They had some difficulties doing that. So I think for the Falcons, this is a really good draft class because it gives you an opportunity. Because I think linemen will have some length in this draft. I think you're going to find some pretty good players, even a little bit later on in the draft class, along the defensive line. And certainly that's an area that they need to upgrade. And, they're over and under this year. Taking a look at it, I think the Falcons are an over team this year.
So where does Shedeur Sanders, the most publicized player in the draft, where do you think in the draft he will end up being selected?
I think he falls into the 20s. Pittsburgh, I think, would be a likely spot for him where, he could sit for a year and then get an opportunity to play. Having watched him when he was at Jackson State and then at Colorado, what jumps out at me, he's not the strong-armest guy in the world, but, you and I have talked about this. That's overrated. It's great to have the rocket, but it's not a necessity to play in the NFL.
Right.
He's smart, and he's a quick processor of information. That, to me, is something you got to look at. And people say, well, he holds the ball longer than any quarterback. Well, he was running a pro-style system. So, I see in college football today, they get these ball out in a second and a half or less than 2 seconds. It's all quick throws, bubble screens, receiver screens, tight end screens. It's like, hey, if I can't complete 65% of my passes doing that, I ought to retire. But he ran a little different system at Colorado. And I give him full credit. I think he's smart. He's a leader. He's accurate. And I can't teach that. He has it. And so I think that in this draft class, he'll probably end up going in the 20s to a team like Pittsburgh, or you would see a team try to trade up into the 20s to get him, like a Cleveland, and try to reteam him back up with Travis Hunter.
What about Jackson Dart and Jalen Milroe? Do they go at the end of the first round, or are we looking at the second or third round with those guys?
I think Jackson's a late first-round pick, and I think Milroe goes in round 2. Milroe, when you watch him, his good tape is really good. And, Buck, you have seen it. Good tape.
Yeah.
And his bad tape is awful. He's got games that he's all off balance, doesn't throw the ball well, has trouble finding secondary receivers downfield. He throws the deep ball better than the short intermediate. So he's a developmental guy. I'm not picking a developmental guy in round 1.
No way.
I'm not. And so I think he goes in round 2. Jackson Dart's interesting. He's smart. He's accurate. He ran an unconventional offense at Ole Miss, the big knock. And I told him this when he came to Manning Passing Academy. Man, listen, you got open receivers underneath you trying to hit the deep ball. And he just sort of winked and said, well, that's the way we run our offense. I get it, but you can't do that in the NFL. You got to take that underneath throw. And if you watch last year in different situations, if it was against Kentucky or Florida or LSU, he had open men, short, and he just wanted to wing it downfield. Now, that is part of being in a Lane Kiffin offense. I get that. But you got to break that bad habit. I look at the Rams, okay, and you got Matt Stafford. But the one thing with Sean McVay, he's always thinking 2 steps ahead. Man, if he could grab a guy like Jackson Dart in round 1, and I don't have to pay him now for at least 4 years, and you do have a 5th-year option, man, then I can add some other pieces of the puzzle around him in that time frame. So I think Jackson Dart goes late in round 1, and I think Milroe, I think he'll go higher than most people think. I think he'll go pretty high in the second round.
Mike Detillier breaking it down for us. Mike, we appreciate the time and the insight, brother. We'll check in soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Buck. Appreciate it, buddy.
Mike, thanks so much.
Anytime.
All right, we'll talk to you down the road. All right, looking at the Falcons quarterback situation, obviously, as it turns out, I know it sounds crazy, the Falcons were actually smart, taking Michael Penix Jr. in that with that top 10 pick a year ago, even though they just got through giving Cousins that mammoth contract in free agency, because if the Falcons had not taken Penix with their first-round pick a year ago, they would be staring at a draft not full of top quarterback candidates. It's really thin when it comes to that in this 2025 draft. Falcons would be in a heap of trouble looking for a quarterback in the draft this year. So looking back, hey, not a bad move at all as we get ready for the Michael Penix era here in Atlanta starting later this year as the Falcons take the field. So that is one thing I'm very pleased about. We've got our quarterback, franchise quarterback, for the next 6 to 8 years here in Atlanta. It's going to do it for Bucks Beat this time around. We'll be back next week with more NFL draft insight. Hope you'll join me then. That'll do it for this edition, this episode of Bucks Beat.